Someone Better by I_am_L on AO3. Episode 5, Chapter 4, Low Batteries. Izuku loved his dad. Dad always took Izuku and Kachan to the parks every Wednesday after work, and then took them to get their favorite ice creams from the ice cream shop. On the weekends, he always found the time to spend with Izuku, whether it be watching movies, playing catch in the yard, teaching him how to play catch, or going out for food. On his birthdays, his dad always took him out to adventure parks or hero-themed museums. He helped him with his quirk analysis notebooks, and he helped design Izuku's favorite hero costume. Dad was Izuku's favorite person in the entire world. Sure, there were some things that Izuku didn't like. He didn't like it when his dad came home every day and asked him if his quirk had come in yet, since he already felt kind of bad for not having one yet, when his entire preschool's class's quirks had developed. He didn't like it when his dad told him not to cry, because Mommy cried when she got sad too, and Dad never said anything to her. He didn't like it when Dad had to go on business trips, because Mommy was always extra sad when he did. And he didn't like the days after his birthday, when Dad got all mad at Mommy, and Mommy hid in her room. Mommy and Dad always argued about his birthday. Mommy had a brother that Dad didn't like because he was a freak. Izuku didn't know what a freak was, but the kids at preschool who all had Izuku didn't know what a freak was, but the kids at his preschool who had already gotten their quirks called it to him sometimes, and it didn't sound very nice. Izuku was 5 years old when Mommy took him to the doctor, and the doctor told him he couldn't be a hero. The doctor had said he had something wrong with his foot, a bone or something, and it meant he couldn't have a quirk. Mommy had cried and cried and cried. When Dad had found out, he was mad. He and Mommy had argued, again, like they always did when Dad got mad. But this time it wasn't about Mommy's freak brother. It was about Izuku. When the yelling finally died down, the house was really quiet, except for Mommy's crying. But Izuku was too scared to go and check on her. Then he heard something heavy dragging across the floor in the front of his bedroom, and the door was slammed shut, and Mommy had only cried harder. When Mommy had stopped crying, and Izuku came out of his room, Mommy told him that Dad had gone to work and that he wouldn't be able to come home for a few days. Izuku had wanted to ask Mommy how many days, but Mommy looked like she might start crying again, so he didn't. Izuku started counting the days on the calendar after that, until Dad could come home and he and Kachan and Dad could go to the park together like they always did and eat ice cream. But the day that Izuku's dad usually took them out for ice cream came and went, and Dad still didn't come home. So Izuku started counting down to the next day, and the next. Kachan asked if Izuku's quirk had come in yet, and Izuku had tearfully explained that his foot was weird, so he couldn't have a quirk. And Kachan had looked at him weirdly, like he was unsure of something. The next day, Kachan looked like he was upset about something, and wouldn't even look at Izuku. The next day, he started acting mean every time Izuku tried to talk to him. Mommy started working more since Dad's work hadn't given him any more money, and she didn't have any more time in the morning to help Izuku take a bath and brush his hair. And Izuku didn't know how, so he couldn't. The kids at his preschool called him gross, and it made Izuku feel gross too, and that just made him sadder. Izuku had a friend in Kachan, but now Kachan didn't want to talk to him, and no one else wanted to talk to him because he was a freak, and because he was quirkless, and because he was gross. And Dad's trip for work was really far away, so he was never home to spend time with Izuku anymore, and Mommy was always working and crying, and it felt like Izuku didn't have anyone. Mommy didn't come home for dinner one night, so Izuku tried to wait until she did. But after a while, his tummy started hurting, and he couldn't wait anymore because it felt like he might be sick. So he got bread from the counter, and he tried to get peanut butter from the shelf, but he couldn't reach it. All he had for dinner that night was bread, and since Mommy wasn't around to see him do it, he ate on the floor in front of the TV while he watched cartoons. Mommy came home, but she was really tired and had fallen asleep in front of the TV and wouldn't eat any of the bread Izuku brought for her for dinner. Izuku had curled up next to her and fallen asleep because he was lonely, and it looked like Mommy was too. His dad had been gone for a whole month. Izuku counted the days off the calendar. When he'd been gone for a month, Mommy got really sad and stopped leaving her room, even to go to work. She always said she was too tired and wouldn't drive Izuku to preschool, so Izuku had to walk all the way there. He felt like a grown-up after, and he told his mommy all about it, but she just told him to go to his room and play with his toys, and went back to sleep. He waited for her to make something to eat for dinner, but she hadn't, so he ate bread again. Everyone at preschool started teasing Izuku more because he was gross, so Izuku tried to take a shower like a big kid, but the water was too hot, and then it was too cold, so he had to hurry to take a shower, and when he had gotten out, there was still lots of soap in his hair. He didn't want to go back into the shower, though, so he tried to clean it out with a towel, but it hadn't worked, and he had to go to school with soap buds still in. Everyone had teased him more after that. Izuku thought Mommy was sad because Dad had to go on a business trip to make lots of money. Only, he must have not made that much money, because every time he came home from school, he found lots of bills that marked urgent. And since Mommy was too sad to go to work and Dad's job never gave them any money, they went unpaid. It made Izuku scared, because he watched a cartoon on TV where a family wasn't able to pay their bills, and they ended up homeless and living outside. Izuku had been camping once, but that was in the middle of the woods, not the city, and he didn't know if he liked to go camping outside forever. Mommy slept a lot now instead of crying. Sometimes Mrs. Bakugo would visit his mommy, and at first she tried to help, but then she was yelling at her. And after she yelled at her, she yelled at him, and said that it was his fault Daddy had left. Izuku wondered if it was really his fault Dad had gone on a business trip, and his fault Mommy always cried now or slept. At preschool, he decided he wanted to make Mommy feel better, so he made a card. He made it with pink and blue construction paper and lots of glitter. Even Kachan had helped a little. Once he told him why he was making it, and he helped him spell the words. And he had the teacher look at his note. She said it was very nice, and his handwriting was excellent. Izuku wasn't sure what excellent meant, but it sounded better than freak, so he figured that was a good thing. He had shown Mommy the card, but Mommy hadn't even looked at it. She told him to set it on her nightstand, and that she'll look at it later. But when he came back a couple hours later with food for her, she hadn't even opened it. When he asked her when she would, she told him to go to his room and leave her alone. Izuku didn't know why, but he missed his Mommy. She was always in her bedroom, laying in bed and sleeping. But still, he missed her. She didn't act like she used to. She didn't make him dinner anymore, or help him with his drawings. She didn't tell him stories about superheroes, or watch movies with him. She didn't smile at him and ruffle his hair anymore. She didn't do anything. It was like his toy robot. When he was all charged, he was able to play and do tricks and walk around, but when his battery was low, he got slow and glitchy. Maybe he just had to find Mommy's charger. Until then, however, he would focus on his hero analysis notebook. He had just started a chapter on Present Mike, and he loved Present Mike. He didn't find Mommy's charger in time. In the next couple weeks, while Dad was away on his business trip longer and longer, Mommy had said weeks ago that he had gone to America, but America couldn't be that far away, could it? And Mommy's batteries got lower and lower. She didn't talk to Izuku anymore when he tried to get her attention. Barely moved. The most he could get her to do was sip some water. At first, Izuku thought Mommy's charger might be food, so he brought her dry cereal. The bread had long since gone dry and moldy. But Mommy didn't want the dry cereal. And how was Izuku supposed to get her up and moving and play with him if she wouldn't eat? So he looked for another way to charge Mommy's batteries. He tried to play Mommy's favorite songs on pots and pans with wooden spoons, singing an off-key version of the music. Mommy had just told him to go away. He tried reading to her, and he had done a good job too. He even knew most of the words. But Mommy didn't like that either. She was getting skinny, and when she opened her eyes, they always looked so tired and sad. Izuku wasn't sure how to get Mommy back to normal. How was he supposed to get Mommy back to normal if she wouldn't even look at him? He tried to call Mrs. Bakugo, but she hung up on him. He tried talking to Kachan at school, but he just frowned at him sadly, looking uncomfortable to be near him, before yelling at him when he wouldn't go away. He had gone to his teacher, because everyone said you were supposed to always go to your teacher when you had problems. And he told her that his mommy's batteries were low and she wouldn't even eat anymore. But the teacher thought he was telling stories and told him to go sit back down at his table. How was he supposed to help Mommy if no one would help him? He remembered his uncle, the one Mommy and Dad liked to argue about, the one that Dad always called a freak, and he thought it might be a good idea to call him. But he couldn't find his contact number. He didn't even know his name. So he grabbed Mommy's phone and he called Dad. The phone had rung and rung and rung. It had rung and rung until it left a voicemail. He tried calling again. No response. Why wasn't Dad answering? But he remembered what his teacher had once said about Americans sleeping on a different schedule since they lived so far away, so he waited until it was really late. Midnight was the longest he ever stayed up in his life, and he tried to call again. If he was right, then it would be 6 a.m. in America, and Dad would be getting ready for work. But he got the same response, so he waited an hour, and he called again, and again, and again. He left voicemails, too. Dozen. Some of them he was saying hi. Some of them he was begging for help. Some of them he was just crying because he couldn't get any words out. And he regretted it too, after he did it, because Dad had told him over and over again, "Boys don't cry, Izuku. Stop crying. You're not a girl, are you?" But he couldn't stop crying because there was something wrong with Mommy, and please pick up the phone, Daddy, please. And Dad didn't pick up the phone. He fell asleep listening to Dad's voice, Dad's ringtone, and the deep timbre of it was almost comforting, almost like those nights when he was little, when Dad would sing him to sleep. Almost. But it was just a recording. Dad wasn't there. Mommy got up one day, and Izuku thought he had finally gotten her batteries charged again. She walked into the living room, and she sat at the table, and she looked so tired and so sad, but Izuku could work with that because at least she was moving. Izuku had brought her dry cereal in a cup of water. All the other foods, the milk, the egg, the cheese, the leftovers, had all gotten gross and slimy and smelly, and Izuku had to throw it away. Mommy had eaten the cereal, and she even thanked Izuku and smiled, just a little. But she had smiled, and Izuku felt so happy. It was the happiest he felt since Dad had gone on the business trip and Mommy's batteries had started dying. Izuku had run to get Mommy the mail when it was delivered, and he brought it to her with a grin on his face, just happy to be helping now that his Mommy was up. Mommy seemed to get more and more tired as she looked through the envelopes. Her face had gotten paler, too, and she looked a lot like she had. A couple days ago. Battery dying, laying there, except worse. She smiled at him, kissed his forehead, commented that he really needed a shower. My goodness, Izuku. You'll have to take one this evening, won't you? There's no time now. And send him off to school. Izuku had asked Mommy to drive him, but Mommy said she couldn't. Said she had to take care of something, and you're such a big boy, Izu. Mommy's great, strong boy now. You can take yourself to school, can't you? So Izuku walked. The school day had passed quickly since he was happy. He grinned at Kachan, and Kachan had smiled back, just a little, before frowning and turning towards his coloring sheets. The teacher had said good morning to him. The school had Izuku's favorite for lunch that day, and not even his classmates' teasing could dim his mood. He'd practically skipped home, excited to see Mommy's batteries charged, excited to play and watch movies and just spend time with his Mommy. When he came home, He found Mommy back in bed, and his heart sank. But maybe she was just taking a nap. He reached over to shake Mommy's shoulder, and her skin was ice cold. He let out a startled yelp. He didn't know what to do because Mommy was so cold. Why was she so cold? What could he do? He ran into the hallway and grabbed as many blankets as he could carry, and he dumped them onto Mommy, tucked her under them. Mommy was still sleeping, and when he touched her face, she was still cold. Why couldn't the blankets get her warm? He ran out of the apartment, heading to his next-door neighbor's, telling her that his Mommy was cold and she wouldn't wake up. Mommy wouldn't wake up, and I can't get her warm. The neighbors called an ambulance and gave him a cookie to nibble on, and he relaxed because the ambulance people were supposed to help people who were sick. They would help Mommy, and they would make her feel all better again. He had nothing to worry about. They'll wake her up and give her hot cocoa to get her warm, and they'll figure out why she was so sad and tired now, and why her batteries kept getting low. After an hour, a lady in a flowered dress and a police officer came to pick him up from the neighbor's house, the neighbor sending him off with another cookie. The lady in the flowery dress said they were going to drive for a long time, and that they'll drop him off at his uncle's house, because Mommy's batteries were dead. Y'all ready for Echo's analyzation? Ooh, okay, we're gonna start off with, obviously, Inko committed ooficide, unsubscribed from life, but, I really want to talk about, how for a moment, Inko got up and was walking and eating and seemed happy, and then, or, more happy than not, and then ended it. This happens a lot with people who unsubscribe from life subscription. People who cancel their subscriptions, because it happens a lot. And it happens with actual illnesses and stuff like that. Like if someone is really, really bad, terminally ill sometimes, and when they seem to be getting better, or even just out of surgery and they seem to be getting better, that is the time that's most critical, because that is when a lot of the times people die. Once they start getting better, especially with people who unsubscribe, right? They seem to be getting better, and then they just snap it off, right? It's always at their happiest, right? Some people think, oh, it's when they're at their lowest. Don't get me wrong, some people do it when they're at their lowest, but some people do it when they're on their climb back up to being happy again. And God, I want to talk about, first of all, how Inko let her depression get the better of herself, right? And, don't get me wrong, mental illness is really hard. But she left Izuku like how she left Aizawa, right? And for what? A man who didn't even fucking care about her enough to stay with her? Really? This is why I said in the other one that I don't really like Inko in this fanfic, and that I have a love-hate relationship. Do not get me wrong, I empathize with her. I understand her grief that her husband just left her, right? I understand. I empathize. But at the same time, you're gonna commit the same mistake you did on your brother to your child. And then when she says, you're a big boy, Izuku, right? Or I don't know if she said exactly that. Let me go up a little. But she said something about him being, you're such a big boy, Izu. Mommy's great, strong boy now. You can take yourself to school, can't you? No, Inko. He is a 5-year-old boy who does not know how to fucking take care of himself. That is... God. Ooh, I am getting emotional. That is a 5-year-old boy. He does not know how to take care of himself, alright? He doesn't even know how to fucking shower. He doesn't understand that you're depressed. He does not understand that he is quirkless. He understands that he doesn't have a quirk, but he doesn't understand the implications of that, and he does not understand the fact that you being depressed is not just your batteries being on low, and that, it's just, Inko, you are failing him. Also, I really hate Mitsuki in this fanfic. I absolutely hate Mitsuki. Inko, I don't like her. She made horrible decisions, right? But I can empathize. But at the same time, I don't like her for what she did. But I can empathize. Mitsuki, on the other hand, fuck you. Fuck you. Because what do you mean you're yelling? You're yelling at the depressed person, and then you're yelling at Izuku. Because it's his fault. This is not Izuku's fault. It's not. It's Hizashi for fucking walking out on his son because his son doesn't have a fucking quirk. What type of quirk is fucking bullshit is that? Sorry, I'm mad. I'm pissed. I'm triggered. Now, on to the psychoanalyzing of, talking and going on a whole rounded essay on how children process grief. Especially children of around the age of Izuku, that is so young. So I want to pinpoint Izuku's probably around 5, 4, 6 years old. Let's round it off and just say 5, right? Izuku's 5 years old, right? And to understand children and how they process grief, we have to understand at what developmental age they are at, right? He is 5, right? Which some of you might, process, oh, I know what 5-year-olds think, behave, and stuff like that. But for those who don't, or for those who need a little more in-depth perception, I'm going to tell you one of the theories on child development. I'm saying one of, because there's many theories out there. Some are more valued, some are more common and more looked upon. Some are frowned upon. I'm looking at you, Freud, Stugman, whatever. Doesn't fucking matter. Freud, I'm looking at you. No one cares about you and your fucking theory on child development. You fucking freak. Stop projecting your mommy issues onto everyone. So, moving on to this next theory. This theory is one of the more popular ones, but at the age of Izuku, which is 5, he falls into 2 categories of developmental issue, like development. So he's in between these two or going through these two. Now, mind you, some children go through these faster than other children. It depends. Some children go through it slower. It's all on, what happens and stuff like that. So the one that is from ages 4 to 5 is initiative versus guilt. So this happens around the preschool age, which is Izuku. He's around the preschool age. So this is when they're figuring out new things. New things like, for example, round things roll, which seems obvious, but this is when their cognitive is finally being like, okay, round things roll, a cube doesn't roll, this, if I push it, will fall, stuff like that, right? And obviously they're also learning social stuff, and in that sense of aspect, like, is it okay for me to do this, and when? So, for example, they're learning that in a library, they must stay quiet. They're learning that in a classroom, I must raise my hand up. They're learning that in the house, there's certain rules and boundaries, and I can't do this. They're learning that out in public, they can't just not have a shirt on, or not have pants on, or not have shoes on, or, stuff like that. They're learning social rules. These are called social rules, right? They're non-verbalized rules that we implement that is not even aware. Social norms, would you say? They're called social norms. I like to call them social rules. Social norms. Like, one of them is walking forward. Some social norms are pretty basic and actually have, stuff backing it up. Like, for example, staying quiet at the library so others can read or study, right? Walking forward is the social norm. Because, obviously, if you walk backwards, you risk the risk of, falling, right? Social norm. Not speaking super loudly when someone's really in front of you. Like, stuff like that. Or, for example, social norm. Not eating lettuce as a snack, right? That's a social norm, right? Not eating lettuce as a snack. People don't really eat lettuce by itself as a snack. A salad, maybe. Lettuce? No. And, grabbing a lettuce and then biting on it. Like, a full lettuce, not, little leaves, no. Whole lettuce, chop, right? Social norms. It's small social rules that are implemented non-verbally most of the time. They're learning stuff like that. They're also learning their own interests, right? And they are also developing senses of guilt, which, first of all, with what, Mitsuki did, and Izuku learning guilt and developing that, hey, I do this, and this ended up doing this, so now I feel guilty. That is something that he's going through. But since Izuku is, 5, he also falls under the industry versus infidelity section, which is ages 5 to 12. So this is fully discovering your own interests. Like fully. This is where kids truly start to discover, oh, I want to be this when I grow up, or I really, really, really like this, and I really, really, really like this. Like, don't get me wrong, little kids can also be like, oh, I like this, oh, I like that, oh, I like this, oh, I like that. But this is where it starts to really, really implement on interests. Like, more complex things. Like, I really like playing the piano and music. Or I really like music because I like playing the piano. Stuff that are more in-depth, right? Realizing that there are differences from others, right? Which, of course, Izuku's realizing this. He's quirkless, others are not. This is a moment in development when they're learning. I have long hair, but that one has short hair. Or, I have, I'm shorter, but that person, like, it's when it fully starts coming into the forefront of their mind and realizing that other people are different than them. And this is where they actually start to want to show that, hey, I can do this correctly. Look at me. I'm doing this right. It's why you see 5-year-olds to 12-year-olds coming up to you being like, look, I made this drawing, because they want your validation. They're like, look, I can do this right. Look, I'm doing this right. Don't get me wrong. Everybody wants validations and stuff like that. But kids at this age tend to do it a whole lot more than other ages, And they tend to crave that validation a whole lot more. They also ask questions like, can I make it in this world? This goes more towards the end, obviously, of that 5 to 12 mark. For little kids, like 5-year-olds, they probably think, what can I do to make the day better? What can I do to make my month better? What can I, like, they start thinking of the future and stuff like that. Obviously, for kids that are like 10 to 12, they're thinking more big things like, how can I make it to this world? What do I want to do when I grow up? Stuff that are more developed that really doesn't initiate with Izuku. And recognition of, others' wants, and stuff like that, and others' feelings and stuff like that, especially considering that they also really, really start to develop empathy and stuff like that at around the ages of 2 and 4. Hold up. I'm trying to read these notes. I have notes. I still have notes. Recognition from others equals hard work. Oh, okay. I see. Positive reinforcement equals I'm doing the right thing. Negative reinforcement means I'm doing the wrong thing. Reinforcement, basically saying, oh, I do this. Oh, you don't like that. Okay, I stop doing that. It's when they are, like, don't get me wrong, like, kids at the ages of, like, 2, 3, 4, they like to experiment a lot on boundaries, right? And around ages 5 to 12, they start actually respecting said boundaries, like rules and stuff like that, and being like, okay, this is what I do. It's why I said, like, the social norms kind of thing. That is another thing that they learn. So that is where Izuku is mentally. Mentally, he's learning social norms. He's learning guilt. These are the important ones. Social norm, guilt, positive and negative reinforcement is starting to really, really stick with him, and boundaries and stuff like that. Learning that he is different from others and truly developing his own interest, right? Actually, like, really developing it and going forward. Tell me, for a kid who in this whole chapter has been told, it's your fault, is guilt. That is technically it's a form of positive reinforcement, not really negative. Positive, negative reinforcement doesn't mean like negative as in like I hit you or stuff like that. No, negative as in taking away, positive as in giving, right? So I think it would be giving. I don't know. Words are a little complicated to evaluate in those two, so I wouldn't know if it would fall under negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement. So take that with a grain of salt. But he's being reinforced by the whole it's your fault. So he's like, it's my fault that daddy went away for work, right? He's going to implementalize that. He's going to really get that deep. Because mind you, he's learning social norms. He's learning what's good, what's wrong, what's right, what's good, what am I supposed to do? He's learning all that stuff. And guess what? Mitsuki just planted in his head that it is his fault his mother's quote-unquote batteries died. That is going to have everlasting fucking consequences. Now, if a child at this age is learning, other people are different from me, these are social norms, this is what I'm supposed to do, boundaries are actually being, enforced by them as well. And they're learning about guilt. They're learning about emotions a whole lot more. Tell me, what do you think is going to happen when this child's mother dies? When someone who is close to the child tells them that it is his fault. When the child tries to do everything in his fucking power to keep his mother alive, to keep her batteries alive and charging. What do you think he's going to compartmentalize from this experience? What he's going to compartmentalize in his little head is that nothing he does is good enough, because nothing he did helped his mother. Therefore, he's not good enough. Then he's going to start saying he is different from others. He doesn't have a quirk. Other people are treating him badly. Why? He doesn't have a quirk. I'm worthless. I'm useless. He's compartmentalizing all this stuff. Not to mention kids at that age, to comprehend such a complex thing like death is hard. Don't get me wrong. They can to an extent understand it, but their grief is different. Their grief is so different. And we're going to be seeing how grief really truly affects him. But I wanted to talk about specifically here how his mother's death and the lead up to his death is going to most definitely hurt him on the long run. And obviously we're going to talk about more about his signs and his way of grieving as we go through the chapters, because he shows many different ways of grieving that I'd like to tell you about. For here, an example, he grieves his mother in such a way because he's like, she's still here, but I want her to, play with me. Why isn't she playing with me? Which, by the way, this is so sad because I'm pretty sure if Aizawa knew all this and could see all this for some way, shape, or form, he would understand Izuku to a degree, because, Izuku lived, or Aizawa lived what Izuku lived through, right? Aizawa had a moment where, yes, Inko was alive, but she wasn't the Inko he knew, right? Like, for example, Izuku. His mother was alive, but she wasn't his mother anymore. She was just a limped body, depressed and sad, right? Izuku's father left him for something that Izuku couldn't change. Aizawa's father left him for something that he couldn't change. They're foils of each other, except one has autism and the other doesn't. Although I would Izuku's giving a little bit of just a little bit, just saying. And obviously this hurt Izuku, and yeah, that's what I wanted to say. This is long notes, I know, super long, but I hope you guys enjoyed this this long TED talk about children and specifically developmental, and how because of Izuku's developmental stages in life, how this could implement huge and astronomical change in his adult life. As I said, he's going to feel extremely and the guilt of feeling useless and all that stuff is going to translate later down in the road as feeling incompetent, worthless. His self-esteem is going to be super, super low. He's going to think, I wasn't able to save my mother. Therefore, he's going to compartmentalize that into, I can't do this because I'm not good enough, right? There will always be that little chip in the back of his head saying that he isn't good enough, saying that he can't do this. He's always going to think he's not good enough for other people. He's probably going to become a people pleaser, trying his best and his darnest to get people to be happy, to like him. There's probably going to be a part of him that is always going to try to make others happy, right? Because, he's probably going to have trauma of seeing people sad, because he's going to be like, no, don't be sad. Don't be sad. I don't want you to die, right? He's going to compartmentalize that in the way, shape, or form where he feels that everyone's happiness is his responsibility. He's basically going to become a people pleaser, a welcome mat, a people pleaser who overminds his own emotions and his own happiness to make sure that everyone around him is happy and okay. Because in the end, he is insecure and feels as though he is worthless and useless. And he's going to hold on to every validation he could ever grab and hold on to it for dear life. Basically what Izuku's mother just created and what Mitsuki just created is a people pleaser who will always get hurt, because even though a person is hurting him, he will never stop trying to help them. Why? Because he wants the validation he so desperately wanted when he was little and his mother was lying in bed. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.